In recent weeks, the world has been captivated by a surge in unexplained aerial phenomena. Reports of glowing orbs, silent drones, and unidentified flying objects have poured in from every corner of the globe. New Jersey, in particular, has become a hotspot for these occurrences. Witnesses describe strange, hovering lights that shift colors and defy conventional physics. Videos flood social media, showing objects darting across the night sky with an almost playful disregard for gravity. These sightings aren't isolated. They're part of a growing phenomenon that has left scientists, skeptics, and governments scrambling for answers. The state has become a focal point for modern UAP activity, leaving many to wonder, why here and why now? But for those familiar with the strange and the unexplained, these recent events feel eerily familiar. They echo a peculiar night when a small town in New Jersey became the epicenter of a mystery that has never been fully solved. A night when the Wanaque Reservoir became a stage for something extraordinary, and perhaps a prelude to the phenomena we're witnessing today. So what truly happened over the reservoir that night? To answer these questions, we must journey back to the dead of winter of 1966, a place that, for one night, seemed to stand at the very edge of the otherworldly. It was January 11th, 1966, in Wanaque, New Jersey. A quiet, uneventful evening, much like any other winter night in this small town. Officer Joseph Sisko was on patrol, driving his squad car along his usual route. Sisko wasn't just any cop. He was known in the community as a diligent, no-nonsense officer who took his duties seriously. That particular night, his route took him past the reservoir, a vast, frozen expanse of water that seemed to disappear into the darkness. It was cold, still, and quiet. Just another routine patrol. At least, that's what Sisko had thought. Around 6:30 p.m., a strange light in the distance caught Officer Sisko's eye. At first, he assumed it was a star, unusually bright and low on the horizon. But then he noticed something extraordinary. The light pulsed, its colors suddenly shifting from white to red to green. As he watched on, he realized it wasn't just sitting there. This light, it was moving, gliding effortlessly across the darkened sky. However, it wasn't moving like any aircraft he'd ever seen. And then it came to a sudden stop, halting, as if hitting an imaginary wall. It hovered, silently, weightless, as if defying gravity. Sisko pulled his car to the side of the road. He opened the door and stepped out into the frigid night. The air was still, and the only sound was the crunch of his boots on the frosty ground. As he stared at the object, the light seemed to intensify and shift, its colors blending into a mesmerizing, ethereal dance. For a moment, Sisko felt an overwhelming sense of unease, as if the light was aware of him, studying him as much as he was studying it. Something about this thing felt off. It was as if it was sentient, intelligent, and aware. Hastily, Sisko radioed in the sighting, his voice steady but tinged with urgency. Within minutes, the quiet streets of Wanaque began to stir as others rushed to the scene. Among the first to arrive was the town's well-regarded mayor, Harry Wolfe, accompanied by his teenage son, Billy. Before long, council members, officials, and intrigued townsfolk stood side by side, gazing skyward in stunned silence, struggling to comprehend the sight before them. Suspended above them was a breathtaking spectacle. A radiant orb, hovering silently and pulsing with an almost lifelike energy. Its hypnotic glow seemed to perform for the onlookers, just as it had for Sisko moments earlier, shifting fluidly through brilliant white, deep crimson, and a mesmerizing emerald green. The colors blended and swirled, as though the orb was putting on a deliberate show, as if feeding off the astonishment of the crowd below. It was not just a sight to behold. It felt as if the orb itself was aware of its audience. But then, the behavior of the object grew stranger still. Suddenly, a focused beam of light shot down from the craft, slicing through the darkness and striking the frozen surface of the reservoir. The beam was intense, its glow casting eerie shadows across the gathered crowd. Witnesses described how the beam seemed to burn the ice, though no flames or heat were apparent. It was as if the light was probing, searching for something hidden beneath the icy expanse. Civil Defense Director Bentley Spencer arrived moments later, accompanied by Fred Steins, a longtime employee of the reservoir who knew every inch of its layout. Both men were seasoned professionals, not prone to flights of fancy, yet even they were struck silent by the spectacle before them. Spencer observed the scene with a critical eye, noting how the beam of light appeared to emanate from a circular opening in the orb, almost like a porthole. He later described the activity as not random, but deliberate, as if it's investigating. Fred Steins couldn't take his eyes off the glowing beam. He pointed out how the ice beneath the light began to crackle and glisten, as though reacting to the beam's energy. Fred explained that he had been working at the reservoir of decades and never seen anything like this before. As the minutes passed, the scene grew even more chaotic. Word of the sighting spread quickly, and curious residents, many of whom had been listening to police scanners, flocked to the reservoir. Traffic ground to a halt as drivers abandoned their cars to join the growing crowd, their faces lit with a mix of wonder and fear. Police scrambled to manage the situation, eventually closing off the main gate to stop the swelling tide of onlookers. But even as the crowd continued to grow, an unshakable sense of unease settled over everyone. Whatever this object was, it was far beyond their understanding, and it felt undeniably otherworldly. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the orb began to ascend. The beam of light retracted seamlessly, and the orb's pulsating glow intensified, flooding the scene with an enveloping radiance. With a final blinding flash, it shot into the night sky, disappearing in an instant. The crowd froze, their collective gasps swallowed by the crushing silence that followed, as if the wind had vacated their lungs, the air heavy with the weight of what they had just witnessed. The faint crackle of shifting ice on the reservoir breaking the silence. Whatever that orb was, whatever it was searching for, it left behind more questions than answers, vanishing as mysteriously as it had arrived. The following night, January 12th, the events took an even stranger turn. Patrolman Jack Wardlaw, stationed near Stonetown, was performing his usual patrols when a peculiar sight caught his attention. Wardlaw was a seasoned officer with years of experience under his belt. Yet what he saw that night would challenge everything he thought he knew. Hovering in the sky was a bright white disc, eerily similar to the object described by Cisco and the other witnesses the previous night. It floated with an unsettling precision, moving silently through the cold air. At first, Wardlaw thought it might be a conventional aircraft, but its movements quickly dispelled that notion. The object changed direction with an ease that defied the laws of physics, gliding horizontally one moment and shifting vertically the next. Wardlaw pulled over and stepped out of his vehicle, his breath forming misty clouds in the icy air. He brushed them aside, his gaze fixed on the strange object looming in the sky. An unsettling eeriness settled over him. The silence felt unnatural. He rubbed his ears, questioning if they still worked, but no sound came. No hum of an engine, no mechanical whir. Something so massive shouldn't move so quietly, yet there it was, a silent observer. The craft hovered briefly, almost as if it sensed his stare, before shooting off into the night with an impossible speed that left him frozen in disbelief. By now, the Wanaque sightings had captured the town's imagination. Stories spread like wildfire, each retelling adding new layers of detail. Police phone lines were inundated with hundreds of calls about a strange orb in the sky, some with fear in their voice and some with awe. Collectively, Witnesses described the object's silence as one of their most unnerving features. It wasn't just the light or the movement that disturbed them, it was the absence of any sound, as though the objects existed outside the natural order of things. As media attention grew, the US Air Force stepped in. Like most UFO sightings, this one came with suspicions of a government cover-up, real or imagined, and this case was no different. Shortly after midnight on the first night of sightings, word came from Stewart Air Force Base in Newburgh, New York, that an Air Force helicopter with a powerful beacon had been on a mission over the area at about the same time the UFO was spotted. However, the following morning, an official spokesman for Stewart Air Base, Major Donald Sherman, denied any such aircraft had been on any such mission that night, and that the helicopter explanation had been without foundation. Weirder yet, the next day the Pentagon said that the mystery object was indeed a helicopter with a powerful beacon. McGuire Air Force Base in Wrightstown chimed in and said that the object was a weather balloon, which had been launched from Kennedy International Airport. When skeptics argued that balloons don't hover or emit focused beams, they shifted their explanation to the planet Venus. However, this too was dismissed outright. No planet, no matter how bright, could move with such precision, and demanded better answers. Finally, officials settled on the explanation of a helicopter with a high-powered searchlight. But the witnesses were adamant. There had been no sound of rotors, and helicopters don't change colors or move like that. Unsatisfied with the official response, they demanded more answers, but were met with nothing but silence. Decades later, the Wanaque UFO Incident remains one of the most compelling sightings in human history. What makes it unique isn't just the sheer number of witnesses, including police officers, officials, and townsfolk, but the consistency of their accounts. Skeptics argue it could have been experimental military technology, a weather phenomenon, or mass hysteria. Yet, for those who were there, the memory of that strange, silent light is unshakable. So what really happened over Wanaque Reservoir that winter night? Was it an advanced craft from Earth, or something far more otherworldly, a visitor from beyond our understanding? And that intense beam of light, was it searching for something beneath the ice? Or worse, was it planting something, burying it deep beneath the frozen surface? A dormant precursor waiting for the right moment, the right signal, to emerge and reveal itself to the world.